For Thomas Harrison, a fourth-generation farmer struggling to keep his family's historic farm afloat, the collapse of his century-old barn during last night's storm feels like the final nail in his coffin. The Harrison farm, once the pride of Mill Valley, Montana, has been deteriorating steadily over the past decade. Rising equipment costs, 3 consecutive years of drought, and mounting debt have pushed Thomas to the brink of losing everything his great-grandfather built. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The farm's decline has been particularly painful because of its rich history. Since 1898, when James Harrison first staked his claim on this fertile valley, the family has weathered every challenge that came their way. Through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, and countless personal hardships, the Harrisons persevered. The old barn, with its hand-hewn beams and weathered siding, had stood as a testament to their resilience. Now, like Thomas's hopes for the future, it lies in ruins. Standing amid the wreckage on this cold autumn morning, Thomas surveys the damage with a heavy heart. The massive beams that had stood strong for over a century now lie splintered and broken. Each piece of debris holds a memory. The hay loft, where he first kissed Sarah during the harvest dance of '95. The corner stall where his daughter Emily learned to milk their last dairy cow. The rafters still bearing his grandfather's initials carved in 1943. All of it reduced to rubble in a single night. The insurance adjuster's recent words echo in his mind. "Your policy's coverage is minimal, Mr. Harrison. Best start thinking about other options." Thomas had been too proud to increase the coverage when times were better, and now that decision, like so many others, has come back to haunt him. The bank has already started making noise about foreclosure, and this disaster might just give them the excuse they need to finally pull the plug. As Thomas begins the grim task of salvaging what he can, something unusual catches his eye. There, beneath the shattered floorboards where the old feed storage used to be, a metallic glint reflects the morning sun. At first, he assumes it's just another piece of broken farm equipment, but as he clears away more debris, his breath catches in his throat. Partially exposed in the disturbed earth is what appears to be an old chest, its metal fittings tarnished with age but still intact. The wood is dark and weathered, suggesting it's been buried there for generations. Thomas's hands tremble as he realizes this chest must predate even his great-grandfather's purchase of the land. With mounting excitement, he carefully excavates around the mysterious container, his farmer's calloused hands working with unexpected delicacy. The chest itself is remarkably well preserved, protected from the elements by the barn's flooring. Its craftsmanship speaks of another era, intricate iron workings and a peculiar symbol carved into the lid that Thomas doesn't recognize. The design resembles nothing he's seen in his family's historical records or the town's archives. It's locked, but the ancient mechanism is no match for time and rust. With a solid twist and the groan of metal that hasn't moved in over a century, the lid creaks open. Inside, Thomas finds several items that make his heart race. A leather-bound journal with yellowed pages, its cover embossed with the same strange symbol as the chest. What appears to be a carefully preserved map on parchment, its edges crisp despite its age. And most intriguingly, a strange metallic artifact about the size of his palm. The object is unlike anything he's ever seen. Circular in shape, with unusual markings and symbols etched into its surface. When he picks it up, it feels unexpectedly warm to the touch, as if it holds some hidden energy within. The journal's first pages reveal it belonged to a man named William Blackwood, dated 1872, more than 2 decades before Thomas's great-grandfather acquired the farm. The handwriting is faded but legible, written in an educated hand that suggests its author was no ordinary frontier settler. What Thomas reads makes him sink to his knees in disbelief. According to the journal, this land once held a secret that could change the fate of the territory forever. Blackwood writes of an ancient legend, one that predates even the earliest European settlers in the region. As Thomas delicately handles each item, his mind races with possibilities. The historical significance alone might be enough to attract attention and potentially funding. But something tells him there's more to this story than just historical artifacts. The way the metallic object seems to pulse with warmth in his grip, the mysterious symbols that don't match any historical record he's familiar with, the tantalizing hints in Blackwood's journal, it all points to something bigger, something that could potentially save not just his farm, but rewrite the entire history of Mill Valley. A gust of wind scatters some loose papers around him, and Thomas quickly returns the items to the chest. The rational part of his mind warns him to proceed cautiously. Too many farmers have lost everything chasing wild dreams and impossible schemes. Yet he can't shake the feeling that this discovery is different. Should he contact the local historical society, the university, or should he first try to decipher more of the journal's contents on his own? The last thing he wants is to have this discovery snatched away before he can understand its true significance. As he secures the chest in his pickup truck, covering it carefully with an old tarp, Thomas feels a mixture of hope and trepidation. In his 20 years of farming, he's learned that anything that seems too good to be true usually is. But there's something about this discovery that feels right, as if the land itself has chosen this moment to reveal its secrets. Looking back at the collapsed barn one last time, Thomas whispers a quiet thank you to whatever twist of fate led to this moment. Sometimes he thinks what appears to be destruction might actually be the beginning of something extraordinary. With the chest safely hidden in his truck, he heads home, his mind already swimming with the possibilities that lie within those ancient pages, and the mysterious artifact that seems to hold the key to a forgotten legend. Life hadn't always been this challenging for Thomas Harrison. Growing up on Harrison Farm in the 1980s and early 90s, he had witnessed the property at its peak. His father, Michael Harrison, had transformed the traditional family farm into one of Montana's most prosperous agricultural operations, combining time-honored farming practices with modern innovations. The Harrison name meant something in Mill Valley back then. It represented resilience, integrity, and success. The sprawling 640-acre property had been a showcase of agricultural excellence. Fields of golden wheat stretched as far as the eye could see. The dairy operation was among the county's largest, and their organic vegetable program supplied produce to restaurants as far away as Seattle. The old barn, now lying in ruins, had been the heart of it all, a symbol of the family's heritage and their ability to adapt with the times while holding on to their roots. Thomas remembers clearly the day his father handed him the deed to the farm. It was his 30th birthday, and Michael, already showing signs of the illness that would take him just 2 years later, had tears in his eyes as he passed on the legacy. "This land is more than just dirt and crops, son," he had said, his voice rough with emotion. "It's the story of our family, written in every furrow and fence post. Take care of it, and it'll take care of you." Those words now haunt Thomas as he drives home with the mysterious chest hidden under the tarp in his truck. He's tried his best to live up to his father's legacy, but the world has changed dramatically in the 15 years since he took over. The first few years had gone well enough. He'd maintained the dairy operation, expanded the organic program, and even won a state award for sustainable farming practices. Sarah, his high school sweetheart-turned-wife, had been by his side through it all, keeping the books and managing their small farm store. But then the troubles began, one after another, like a series of brutal storms that never seemed to end. First came the economic downturn of 2008, which hit their high-end organic customers particularly hard. Several of their restaurant contracts dried up overnight. The dairy industry's consolidation forced them to sell off their prized Holstein herd. 75 years of careful breeding gone in a single auction. Then, the drought started. 3 consecutive years of watching the sky and praying for rain that never came. Thomas did everything he could to adapt. He took out loans to drill deeper wells, invested in more efficient irrigation systems, and even tried transitioning to drought-resistant crops. But each solution seemed to create new problems, and the debt kept mounting. The final blow came last spring, when their last major organic produce buyer switched to a larger corporate supplier who could guarantee year-round delivery. Now at 45, Thomas barely recognizes his own reflection in the rearview mirror. The past decade has aged him beyond his years. His dark hair is streaked with gray, and deep worry lines crease his weathered face. His father's confident stride has been replaced by the weary shuffle of a man carrying too many burdens. Sarah tries to hide her concern, but he sees it in her eyes every morning as she reviews their dwindling accounts. Their daughter Emily, now a junior in high school, has already started talking about skipping college to help save the farm, a suggestion that breaks Thomas's heart. She's brilliant, with dreams of becoming a veterinarian, and the thought of her sacrificing her future for his failures keeps him awake at night. The farm was supposed to be her inheritance, not her burden. As Thomas pulls into his long driveway, the familiar sight of his farmhouse brings both comfort and anxiety. The two-story Victorian structure built by his great-grandfather in 1898 still stands proud despite its peeling paint and sagging porch. Sarah's flower gardens, though smaller now due to water restrictions, add touches of color around the foundation. It's home, but for how much longer? The bank has given them until the end of the year to catch up on their payments. Thomas has already started quietly looking into selling off parcels of land, something no Harrison has ever had to do. Each potential buyer's visit feels like a knife in his gut. The thought of subdividing the family legacy into 5-acre ranchettes for wealthy out-of-staters makes him physically ill. Parking behind the house where Sarah won't immediately notice the covered chest in his truck bed, Thomas takes a moment to collect himself. The weight of the discovery he's just made feels almost overwhelming. Part of him wants to rush inside and share everything with Sarah immediately. She's always been his partner in all things, his voice of reason when times get tough. But another part urges caution. How many times have they gotten their hopes up over the past few years, only to have them dashed? The warm metal artifact in the chest seems to pulse against his thoughts, as if encouraging him to act. The journal's mysterious references to changing the fate of the territory echo in his mind. Could this discovery somehow save everything they've worked so hard to preserve? Or is he just desperate enough to grasp at any glimmer of hope, no matter how far-fetched? Before he can decide what to do next, the screen door creaks open, and Sarah steps onto the porch. Even after 20 years of marriage, the sight of her still makes his heart skip a beat. Her auburn hair is tied back in a practical ponytail, and her jeans and flannel shirt show signs of the morning's work in their small greenhouse, their last remaining source of income. "Tom," she calls out, shielding her eyes against the morning sun. "I've been trying to call you. Are you okay? How bad is the damage to the barn?" The concern in her voice snaps him back to reality. He needs to tell her everything, about the chest, the journal, the artifact. They've never kept secrets from each other, and he's not about to start now. As he climbs out of the truck, Thomas realizes that this moment might be the turning point they've been praying for. Whether the chest contains just historical artifacts or something more extraordinary, it represents hope, something that's been in short supply on Harrison Farm lately. With newfound determination, he walks toward his wife, ready to share the strange discovery that might just change everything. "Sarah," he says, taking her hands in his, "you're not going to believe what I found in the barn ruins. But first, I need you to promise me you'll keep an open mind." The mixture of curiosity and concern in her eyes reminds him why they've managed to weather every storm so far. Together. Whatever secrets the chest holds, whatever mysteries lie within those ancient pages, they'll face them as they've faced everything else. As partners, as Harrisons. Inside their farmhouse kitchen, Sarah sits in stunned silence as Thomas carefully lays out the contents of the chest on their worn oak table. The same table where 4 generations of Harrisons have shared meals and made decisions that shaped their family's destiny. The leather-bound journal, the aged parchment map, and the mysterious metallic artifact catch the late morning sunlight streaming through the window. Sarah reaches out tentatively to touch the artifact, then pulls her hand back as if sensing its strange warmth. "And you found all this under the barn floor?" she asks, her voice barely above a whisper. "How is that possible?" "We've done repairs on that floor dozens of times over the years." Thomas shakes his head, equally puzzled. It was buried deep beneath the original foundation. The storm must have shifted something. He picks up the journal, handling its fragile pages with care. But it's what's written in here that really got my attention. Together, they begin to read William Blackwood's journal entries. The first few pages detail his arrival in Montana Territory in 1872, but it quickly becomes clear that Blackwood wasn't just another settler seeking farmland. His writings reveal him to be an educated man, a scholar of Native American cultures and archaeology, who came to this valley with a very specific purpose. "Listen to this," Thomas says, carefully turning to a dog-eared page. "April 15th, 1872. The local tribes speak of an ancient people who once inhabited this valley, a people whose knowledge and achievements far surpassed anything we consider possible for primitive cultures. The artifacts I've discovered thus far support these extraordinary claims, but the tribal elders insist the greatest proof lies somewhere on this land. They speak of a sacred site, a place where the ancient ones left their most important legacy." Sarah leans closer, her initial skepticism giving way to genuine interest. Does he say what kind of legacy? The question hangs in the air as Thomas continues reading, his voice growing more animated with each passage. The journal describes Blackwood's growing obsession with finding this sacred site. He writes of strange symbols carved into rocks that match the markings on the metallic artifact, of unusual magnetic disturbances that affected his compass, and of mysterious lights seen in the valley at night. But most intriguingly, he mentions a map given to him by a tribal elder, the very map that now lies on their kitchen table. As they carefully unfold the parchment, both Thomas and Sarah gasp. The map shows their valley, but with markings and references they've never seen before. Prominent among them is a symbol identical to the one carved into the chest, located precisely where their barn stood until last night. "This can't be a coincidence," Sarah murmurs, tracing the symbol with her finger. "But what does it all mean? And why hasn't anyone else ever found this before?" Thomas picks up the metallic artifact, studying its intricate markings more closely. In the better light of the kitchen, he notices something they missed earlier: tiny script etched around its circumference, almost too small to read. The writing appears to be in multiple languages, some completely unfamiliar. "We need help with this," Sarah says decisively, always the practical one. "But we have to be careful about who we tell. If this is as significant as it seems, we can't risk losing control of it." Just then, their daughter Emily bursts through the door, home early from school. She stops short at the sight of her parents huddled over the strange objects on the table. "What's all this?" she asks, dropping her backpack and moving closer. "Is that why you weren't answering your phone, Dad?" What happened to the barn? Thomas and Sarah exchange a look, silently debating how much to share. Emily isn't a child anymore. At 17, she's proven herself more mature and level-headed than many adults they know. Plus, her passion for science and history might provide valuable insights. "Sit down, Em," Thomas says finally. "Remember all those stories your grandfather used to tell about the valley's mysteries? About the lights people used to see? And the strange tales the Native Americans passed down? Well, I think we might have found something that connects to all of that." For the next hour, they share their discovery with Emily, watching as her initial curiosity transforms into excitement. Her quick mind immediately starts making connections they missed. She points out that the strange script around the artifact's edge includes what appears to be Latin and Greek, along with other ancient languages she studied in school. "Look here," she says, pointing to a particular section. "This symbol keeps repeating. It's similar to ones I've seen in my archaeology books, but it's not quite the same. And these markings here? They almost look like astronomical symbols, but again, they're different somehow." As the afternoon sun begins to fade, the Harrison family finds themselves deeper in the mystery than ever. Emily uses her laptop to research William Blackwood, discovering that he was indeed a real historical figure, a respected archaeologist who mysteriously disappeared in 1873, leaving behind no trace of his discoveries. His last known letter to the Archaeological Society mentions a discovery that will reshape our understanding of American prehistory, Emily reads from a scholarly article. but he vanished before revealing what he'd found. "Dad, this could be huge." The excitement in the kitchen is palpable, but it's tempered by an underlying current of anxiety. They all understand that this discovery could change everything, but change isn't always positive. The warm metal artifact seems to pulse more strongly as the sun sets, casting strange shadows on the wall. "We need a plan," Sarah says finally, her organizational skills kicking in. "We can't just rush into this. If there really is something significant hidden on our land, we need to approach this carefully. The wrong move could cost us everything." Thomas nods, feeling the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. This isn't just about saving the farm anymore. It's about uncovering a mystery that's lain dormant for over a century. Whatever William Blackwood found, whatever the ancient people left behind, it's now in their hands. As they begin to formulate a strategy, none of them notice the slight tremor in their coffee cups, or the faint humming sound coming from the direction of the collapsed barn. The discovery they've made is just the beginning, and the land itself seems to be responding to the awakening of its long-buried secrets. After careful consideration, the Harrison family decides their first step should be documenting everything meticulously before proceeding further. Emily, putting her photography skills to use, captures detailed images of each artifact, while Sarah creates a spreadsheet to catalog every detail from Blackwood's journal. Thomas, meanwhile, focuses on translating the map's landmarks to their modern equivalents. Working late into the night, they spread their materials across the dining room table. The metallic artifact sits at the center, its mysterious warmth seeming to intensify as darkness falls. Emily has set up her laptop, cross-referencing historical records with the journal entries while Sarah carefully transcribes the text to preserve the deteriorating pages. "Look at this entry," Sarah says, adjusting her reading glasses. Blackwood mentions consulting with a local tribe's elder named Running Bear about the lights in the valley. He describes them as dancing columns of blue-green radiance that appear to emerge from the earth itself. That sounds an awful lot like the stories your grandfather used to tell, Thomas. Indeed, Michael Harrison had often spoken of strange lights seen in the valley during his youth. Most locals had dismissed them as aurora borealis or atmospheric phenomena, but Michael always insisted they were something else entirely. He described them as intelligent, claiming they moved with purpose and seemed to respond to human presence. "There's more," Sarah continues, her finger tracing the faded ink. Blackwood writes that Running Bear's people believed the lights were guardians, protecting something of great importance buried deep within the earth. They called this place the Sleeping Ground and considered it sacred. Thomas unfolds the map again, studying it under the bright desk lamp they've brought in. The symbol where our barn stood, it matches the description of the Sleeping Ground's location. But why would anyone build a barn directly over a sacred site? Emily looks up from her laptop. "Maybe that was the point," she suggests. "Great-great-grandfather James might have built it there deliberately, to protect the site. Listen to this. I found an old letter he wrote to his brother in 1899, a year after buying the land. He mentions choosing the barn's location despite it not being the most convenient spot, saying only that some places deserve to be sheltered from prying eyes. The implications of this revelation sink in slowly. Had their ancestor known about the site's significance? Had each generation of Harrisons served as unwitting guardians of an ancient secret? Thomas stands up, pacing the room as he often does when deep in thought. "We need to inspect the barn site more thoroughly, but we have to be careful. If anyone notices us poking around, it'll raise questions we're not ready to answer." "I might have a solution for that," Sarah offers. "Remember Jake Miller from the Historical Society? He owes me a favor after I helped with their fundraiser last spring. We could ask him to file paperwork for an archaeological survey of the barn site. Make it look like a routine historical documentation of the damage. That would give us legitimate cover to examine the area more closely." It's a solid plan, but as they discuss the details, a low rumble of thunder reminds them of the approaching storm system. The weather forecast had predicted several more days of unstable weather, both a blessing and a curse. The rain would keep curious neighbors away, but could also complicate their investigation of the site. Emily suddenly sits up straighter, her eyes wide. "Dad, what about the insurance adjuster? Won't they want to inspect the barn too?" It's a complication they hadn't considered. Thomas rubs his temples, feeling a headache coming on. "You're right, they'll probably send someone out as soon as the weather clears. We need to move quickly." Sarah reaches for her phone. "I'll call Jake first thing in the morning. If we can get the Historical Society involved before the insurance company arrives, we'll have more control over the situation." As they formulate their plan, the metallic artifact begins to emit a faint, barely audible hum. Emily is the first to notice, placing her hand near it cautiously. "It's getting warmer," she reports. "And look, some of the markings seem to be changing." They gather around the artifact, watching in amazement as certain symbols appear to shift and reorganize themselves. The effect is subtle, so subtle they might have missed it if they weren't paying close attention. The changes seem to correspond to the intensifying storm outside. "We need to document this," Emily says, already reaching for her camera. But before she can take a photo, a brilliant flash of lightning illuminates the room, followed immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The power flickers and dies, plunging them into darkness. In the sudden blackout, the artifact's glow becomes unmistakable. It emits a soft, pulsing blue-green light, the same color described in Blackwood's journal. The light creates strange shadows on the walls, and the humming grows slightly louder. "Thomas," Sarah whispers, gripping her husband's arm. "Look outside." Through the dining room window, they can see similar lights rising from the direction of the collapsed barn. They dance in the rain like luminescent columns, exactly as Blackwood described them. The sight is both beautiful and terrifying. "It's responding," Emily breathes, her voice filled with wonder. The artifact, the lights, they're connected somehow. Thomas makes a decision. Despite the storm, despite the darkness, they need to see what's happening at the barn site. "Get your rain gear," he tells his family, "and bring the artifact. Something's happening, and we need to understand what." As they prepare to venture out into the storm, Thomas can't shake the feeling that they've set something in motion, something that's been waiting for over a century to be discovered. The warmth of the artifact through his jacket pocket seems to pulse in rhythm with his racing heart. The truth about their land, about their family's legacy, about the ancient secret they've stumbled upon. It all lies out there in the rain and darkness. Whatever they find tonight will change their lives forever. As they step out into the storm, the lights in the distance seem to brighten, as if welcoming them to unlock a mystery that has waited generations to be revealed. The drive to the barn site in the pouring rain is tense and silent. Thomas maneuvers their old pickup truck carefully along the muddy farm road, while Sarah holds the still glowing artifact, wrapped in a towel on her lap. Emily sits between them, documenting everything on her phone's camera, despite the less-than-ideal conditions. As they approach the collapsed barn, the ethereal columns of light become more distinct. They seem to weave through the rain like living things, their blue-green radiance casting an otherworldly glow over the debris. The artifact's humming grows stronger, its warmth intensifying until Sarah has to set it on the dashboard. "Stop here," she says when they're about 50 yards from the site. "We should probably continue on foot." Thomas nods, killing the engine but leaving the headlights on. The beams cut through the rain, creating strange refractions in the luminescent display before them. Donning their rain gear, the family steps out into the storm. The moment their boots hit the ground, the lights react, swirling more vigorously and seemingly drawing closer. The artifact's hum becomes a clear musical tone that somehow cuts through the sound of rain and thunder. "Look at the ground," Emily calls out, pointing her flashlight at their feet. The mud around the collapsed barn is threaded with tiny streams of the same blue-green light, like glowing veins in the earth. They all seem to converge on the spot where Thomas found the chest. Moving closer, they notice something else. The rain isn't falling normally around the illuminated area. Droplets seem to slow and dance in the light, creating patterns that defy natural physics. Emily's scientific mind races to explain what they're seeing, but she comes up empty. The journal mentioned something about this, Sarah recalls, shielding her phone as she checks her transcribed notes. Blackwood wrote about atmospheric anomalies around the site during storms. He believed they were some kind of energy manifestation, but didn't understand the mechanism. Thomas approaches the exposed foundation where he found the chest, the artifact now pulsing rhythmically in his coat pocket. The ground beneath his feet feels strange, not exactly vibrating, but somehow energized. Using his flashlight, he examines the earthen cavity more closely. "There's something here," he announces, crouching down despite the rain. Some kind of stone surface. Brushing away mud and debris reveals what appears to be worked stone, covered in symbols similar to those on the artifact. The glowing veins in the ground seem to emanate from these markings. For the next several hours, they work methodically despite the weather. Emily photographs everything, creating a detailed record of their findings. Sarah sketches the layout and takes measurements while Thomas carefully clears more of the stone surface. The rain continues to fall, but the strange lights provide more than enough illumination to work by. What they uncover is remarkable: a circular stone platform, approximately 12 feet in diameter, carved with intricate symbols that spiral toward its center. The markings match not only those on the artifact, but also some of the symbols on Blackwood's map. "It's some kind of key," Emily suggests, comparing the patterns. "Look, the symbols on the artifact align perfectly with these curved grooves in the stone. It's like a giant combination lock." The implications of her observation hang heavy in the rain-soaked air. Whatever secrets this site holds, the artifact they found is clearly meant to unlock them. But should they? The lights continue their hypnotic dance around them, as if encouraging further exploration. Sarah voices what they're all thinking. "If we activate this mechanism, there's no telling what might happen. This goes beyond saving the farm. We could be dealing with something that affects the entire valley, maybe more." Thomas stands, his joints protesting after hours of crouching in the cold rain. "We need to understand more before we take any irreversible steps. Blackwood's journal might have more information we haven't found yet." Just then, a car's headlights appear on the distant road. Someone else is driving out to their property. The family quickly gathers their equipment, but as they prepare to leave, something extraordinary happens. The artifact suddenly pulses with intense light, and the stone platform responds with a deep, resonant tone that they feel in their bones. The glowing veins in the ground flare brilliantly for a moment, then fade to almost nothing. When they look at the platform again, the symbols have vanished, leaving what appears to be ordinary stone. "It's protecting itself," Emily whispers in awe, "like some kind of defense mechanism." They barely make it back to their truck before Jake Miller's Historical Society vehicle pulls up. Through the rain, they can see him peering at the barn site with a flashlight, but there's nothing unusual to see now, just rain and mud and storm-tossed debris. "Thomas?" Jake calls out, recognizing the truck. "Sarah called about documenting the barn collapse. I know it's nasty weather, but I was in the area and thought I'd take a preliminary look." Thomas steps out to greet him, trying to appear casual despite his muddy condition. "Thanks for coming, Jake. Not much to see in this weather, though. Maybe we could set up a proper survey once the storm passes." As they make arrangements for a future site visit, Sarah and Emily quickly hide their notes and equipment. The artifact has gone dormant again, its light and warmth fading to almost nothing. Whatever they witnessed tonight, it seems the site's secrets will only be revealed on its own terms. Back home, changed into dry clothes and gathered around their kitchen table once more, the family attempts to process what they've discovered. The implications are staggering. Clear evidence of advanced ancient technology, hidden for generations on their own land. "We need to be strategic about this," Sarah says, always the voice of reason. "One wrong move could turn our farm into a circus, or worse, attract the kind of attention we don't want." Emily is already compiling their photographs and notes into an organized digital archive. We should cross-reference everything with Blackwood's journal, she suggests. There might be clues about what happened when he tried to access the site. Thomas nods, but his mind is already racing ahead to the practical concerns. They need time to investigate properly, but time is the one thing they don't have. The bank's deadline looms, and now they have to manage Jake's historical survey, too. As if reading his thoughts, Sarah reaches for his hand. "We'll figure this out," she assures him. "Whatever's hidden under our land has waited this long. A few more days won't hurt." But as another flash of lightning illuminates their window, Thomas isn't so sure. Something tells him their discovery tonight has set events in motion that can't be stopped. The real question is whether they'll be ready for what happens next. The next morning breaks with an unsettling calm. The storm has temporarily subsided, but dark clouds on the horizon promise more to come. Thomas awakens early, his mind heavy with the previous night's discoveries, only to find an unexpected visitor at his door, Frank Cooper, the bank's regional manager. "Sorry to drop by unannounced, Mr. Harrison," Cooper says, his crisp suit and polished shoes looking out of place against the muddy farmyard. "But given the situation with your barn, we need to discuss some pressing matters." Thomas's heart sinks as he invites Cooper into the kitchen. Sarah quickly hides the journal and artifacts in the pantry before joining them. The banker's presence is like a bucket of cold water, pulling them sharply back to their immediate financial reality. "I'll be direct," Cooper begins, laying out several documents on their kitchen table, right where the mysterious artifacts had been just hours before. "The barn's collapse affects your property's overall value, which impacts our lending position. Given your current situation, we're going to have to accelerate our timeline." Sarah grips Thomas's hand under the table as Cooper continues. "Instead of the end of the year, we'll need full payment or refinancing within 30 days. Otherwise, we'll have no choice but to initiate foreclosure proceedings." The words hit like physical blows. 30 days. Everything they've worked for, everything they've discovered, could be lost in just 30 days. Thomas begins to protest, but Cooper raises a hand to stop him. "There's more," he says, his tone growing even more serious. "We've received an offer from Greenfield Development Corporation. They're interested in purchasing the entire property, and they're willing to assume your outstanding debt." Thomas feels the blood drain from his face. Greenfield Development is known for buying up family farms and turning them into luxury housing developments. The thought of their land, and whatever secrets it holds, being carved up into suburban lots is almost unbearable. But Cooper isn't finished. They're particularly interested in fast-tracking the deal, especially given the recent archaeological survey request filed with the Historical Society. Thomas and Sarah exchange alarmed glances. How did Greenfield know about Jake's pending survey? Before they can process this, Emily bursts into the kitchen, her face pale. "Dad, Mom, you need to see this," she says, holding up her tablet. On the screen is a local news website with a headline that makes their blood run cold. "Ancient artifacts discovered on local farm. Historical Society investigates mysterious find." The article, while vague, mentions unnamed sources reporting unusual discoveries during the recent storm. There's even a blurry photograph of the lights they saw last night, clearly taken from the road. Cooper's eyebrows rise as he reads the article over their shoulders. "Is there something you'd like to share, Mr. Harrison? Any historical artifacts that might affect the property's value?" Thomas tries to maintain his composure, but his mind is racing. Who could have leaked this information? The only other person who knew about the survey was Jake, and he wouldn't betray their trust, would he? "It's probably just speculation," Sarah interjects smoothly. "You know how people love a good mystery, especially in small towns." But Cooper isn't easily deflected. "Greenfield's offer includes a clause about mineral and archaeological rights," he says, sliding another document forward. "They're willing to increase their offer by 20% if you sign today." The implication is clear. Someone knows something, and Greenfield isn't just interested in building houses. The corporation's sudden urgency and specific interest in archaeological rights suggests they might know more about the site than they're letting on. As if on cue, the artifact in the pantry begins to hum audibly. Cooper looks around confused. "What's that sound?" Old refrigerator, Thomas says quickly. Been meaning to get it fixed. But the humming grows louder, and a faint blue-green glow begins to seep through the pantry door's cracks. Cooper stands up, frowning. Mr. Harrison, is there something? He's interrupted by a sudden rumble that shakes the entire house. Outside, dark clouds have gathered with unnatural speed, and flashes of familiar blue-green light dance between them. Just a storm coming in, Thomas says desperately. But even as he speaks, the lights in the kitchen flicker and die. In the darkness, the glow from the pantry becomes impossible to ignore. Cooper moves toward the pantry door, his face illuminated by the otherworldly light. I think, he says slowly, we need to have a very different conversation about what's really going on here. Before anyone can stop him, he reaches for the pantry door. The artifact's hum reaches a fever pitch, and suddenly, every electronic device in the house powers on simultaneously. Phones, tablets, the TV, even Emily's laptop. Each screen displays the same swirling symbols they found on the stone platform. The pantry door swings open of its own accord, revealing the artifact hovering inches above the shelf where they'd hidden it, spinning slowly and emanating pulses of intense light. Cooper stumbles backward, his carefully maintained professional demeanor crumbling. What in God's name? But it's not over. Through the kitchen window, they can see more lights erupting from the barn site, shooting skyward like luminous geysers. The ground begins to tremble, and in the distance, sirens begin to wail. We need to explain, Sarah starts, but Cooper is already backing toward the door, fumbling for his phone. This changes everything, he says, his voice shaking. I need to make some calls. Corporate needs to know about this immediately. Wait. Thomas moves to stop him, but Cooper is already out the door, practically running to his car. They watch helplessly as he peels out of the driveway, leaving them with the reality that their secret is about to explode into the open. Emily's tablet pings with a news alert. More people are reporting strange lights over the valley. Social media is lighting up with photos and videos. Whatever force they've awakened is no longer content to remain hidden. What do we do now? Emily asks, her voice small against the growing chaos outside. Thomas looks at his wife and daughter, then at the artifact still spinning in their pantry. The time for caution and secrecy is over. Whatever happens next will happen in the full light of day, whether they're ready for it or not. We protect what's ours, he says firmly. The farm, the discovery, all of it. But first we need to understand exactly what we're protecting. Emily, get Blackwood's journal. Sarah, call Jake. We need to know if he's the one who leaked this. We have to work fast. As his family springs into action, Thomas stares out at the light show erupting from his land. He realizes that surviving this crisis won't just be about saving the farm anymore. It's about protecting whatever ancient power they've unwittingly awakened and keeping it out of the wrong hands. The artifact pulses in agreement, its light synchronizing with the celestial display outside. The storm is coming, in more ways than one, and the Harrison family needs to be ready when it breaks. Within an hour of Cooper's dramatic departure, the Harrison farm becomes the center of a growing storm, both literal and figurative. News vans begin appearing at the end of their long driveway, and Thomas's phone won't stop ringing with calls from reporters and curious locals. The artifact continues its mysterious light show in the pantry, seeming to respond to the increasing chaos around them. Just as Thomas is about to call the sheriff for help keeping people off their property, a familiar truck comes bouncing up their drive, bypassing the gathered media. It's Jake Miller, and he's not alone. With him is Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the state's leading archaeologist, whom Sarah recognizes from several historical society events. I didn't leak anything, Jake announces before they can even ask, hurrying inside with Dr. Rodriguez. But when I saw the news breaking, I knew you'd need help. Elena is an old friend, and more importantly, she can be trusted. Dr. Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with silver-streaked black hair, takes in the scene with professional interest. The artifact's glow reflects off her wire-rimmed glasses as she studies it, carefully keeping her distance, Remarkable, she breathes, pulling out a small notebook. Jake told me about the stone platform you found, but this is unprecedented. May I? She gestures toward the artifact, and Thomas nods cautiously. As Dr. Rodriguez examines their discovery, Sarah pulls Jake aside. If you didn't leak the story, who did? Jake's expression darkens. I did some digging after I saw the news. Greenfield Development has been buying up properties all through this valley, always following the same pattern. They somehow learn about unusual features or discoveries on struggling farms, then swoop in with offers that desperate owners can't refuse. They're not just developers, Emily adds, joining the conversation with her laptop. Look at this. She shows them a complex web of corporate connections she's uncovered, linking Greenfield to several archaeological research firms and private collection agencies. They're artifact hunters, Dr. Rodriguez says grimly, looking up from her examination, using real estate development as a cover for their real operations. I've encountered their type before. They find historically significant sites, exploit them for valuable artifacts, then bury the evidence under housing development. Thomas feels a chill despite the warmth still emanating from the artifact. So when Cooper mentioned their interest in mineral and archaeological rights, they already knew something was here, Dr. Rodriguez confirms. The question is how? A heavy knock at the door interrupts their discussion. Through the window, they can see Sheriff Laura Martinez standing on their porch, her expression serious. Thomas lets her in, noting the concerned set of her shoulders. Folks, she says, taking in the gathered group, we've got a situation developing. I've got news vans blocking county roads, dozens of reports of strange lights, and now I'm hearing rumors about corporate lawyers heading this way. Want to tell me what's going on? Instead of answering immediately, Thomas looks to Dr. Rodriguez, who nods encouragingly. Over the next half hour, they bring the sheriff up to speed, showing her the journal, the map, and finally, the still glowing artifact. Rather than dismiss their story, Sheriff Martinez listens intently, occasionally making notes. When they finish, she sits back, rubbing her temples. Well, that explains a few things, like why I've had Greenfield security contractors trying to get permits for private patrols in this area for the past month. They've been watching us, Sarah realizes, her voice tight with anger. Probably ever since they first detected whatever energy signature this site gives off, Dr. Rodriguez suggests. They may have equipment we don't know about, especially if they've done this before. Sheriff Martinez stands adjusting her gun belt. All right, here's what we're going to do. First, I'm setting up a police perimeter around your property. Official investigation, no unauthorized access. That'll keep the media and looky-loos at bay for now. I can help coordinate with the State Archaeological Board, Dr. Rodriguez offers. Get emergency protection orders in place for the site. Jake, you'll need to fast-track that Historical Society survey. Make everything official through proper channels. Emily, who has been quietly working on her laptop, suddenly sits up straighter. Guys, we might have another problem. Look at these satellite images from last night. They gather around her screen, watching as she plays a time-lapse showing strange atmospheric disturbances centered over their farm. The patterns are clearly visible from space, forming complex geometric shapes that match some of the symbols from Blackwood's journal. It's like the site is trying to communicate, Dr. Rodriguez muses, sketching the patterns in her notebook. These formations, they're similar to ancient geometrical systems I've studied, but far more complex. A sharp crack of thunder makes them all jump. Outside, the light show has intensified, and now they can see cars pulling off the road to watch. The artifact's hum takes on a more urgent tone. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast, Thomas says, watching as more news vans arrive at the end of his driveway. Once Greenfield's lawyers get here, let them come, interrupts a new voice. They turn to find Marcus standing bare in the kitchen doorway, Jake beside him. As the current tribal historic preservation officer and a direct descendant of Running Bear, Marcus's presence adds another layer of complexity and protection to their situation. Jake called me, Marcus explains, moving to examine the artifact. My grandfather told stories about this place, passed down from Running Bear himself. We've been waiting for the signs of awakening, though I admit, I never expected it in my lifetime. The artifact's glow intensifies at his presence, and the symbols on its surface begin to shift more rapidly. Marcus nods, as if confirming something. The site isn't just trying to communicate, he says quietly. It's trying to warn us. Before anyone can ask what he means, all their phones buzz simultaneously. Emergency alerts warning of unprecedented weather patterns forming over the valley. The artifact's hum reaches a new pitch, and the lights from the barn site pulse in response. It's starting, Marcus says, his voice grave. The awakening. We need to complete the sequence before they get here, or everything your ancestors and mine worked to protect will be lost. Thomas looks around at the unlikely group gathered in his kitchen. Family, friends, law enforcement, experts, and tribal representatives, all brought together by forces he's only beginning to understand. Whatever is about to happen, at least they won't face it alone. Tell us what we need to do, he says to Marcus, and for the first time since this all began, he feels like they might actually have a chance to protect both his family's legacy and something far more ancient and important. The artifact pulses in approval as they begin to plan, its light steady and strong, while outside the storm clouds gather and the mysteries buried beneath the Harrison farm prepare to reveal themselves at last. As the storm intensifies outside, Marcus Standing Bear spreads Blackwood's map across the kitchen table, weighing down its corners with mugs of coffee. The artifact's pulsing light illuminates the aged parchment, making certain symbols seem to shimmer and shift. The sequence is here, Marcus explains, tracing the spiral pattern that mirrors the stone platform's design. My people have maintained oral traditions about this site for generations, but seeing these markings, they confirm everything our elders taught us. Dr. Rodriguez leans in, her archaeological expertise lending new insights. These patterns, they're not just decorative, they're mathematical. Look at how they relate to each other, forming precise geometric progressions. Emily, who has been quietly working on her laptop, suddenly gasps. That's it! She turns her screen to show them a complex analysis she's been running. The symbols aren't just math, they're coordinates. Star positions, but not from our time. They show the sky as it would have appeared over this valley thousands of years ago. The artifact hums louder, as if confirming her discovery. Its surface markings begin to align themselves with the map's patterns rotating slowly in midair. We need to get back to the stone platform, Marcus says urgently. Now, while the alignments are correct, Sheriff, can you make sure we have privacy? Sheriff Martinez nods, already on her radio. I'll have my deputies clear the road and establish a wider perimeter. Dr. Rodriguez, you might want to document this. The group moves quickly through the rain to the barn site, where the ethereal lights have formed a swirling vortex above the exposed platform. Thomas carries the artifact, which grows warmer with each step closer to its apparent home. As they approach, Emily notices something new. Look at how the water's behaving. The rain near the platform falls in geometric patterns, forming momentary symbols in the air before dissipating. Dr. Rodriguez films everything on her phone while taking rapid notes. Marcus positions himself at the platform's edge, gesturing for Thomas to join him. The artifact needs to be placed precisely, he explains. According to our traditions, it's not just a key, it's part of a lock that's kept something hidden for millennia. Hidden? Sarah asks, voicing everyone's concern. What exactly are we unlocking here? Before Marcus can answer, bright headlights cut through the rain. Several black SUVs are approaching fast, bypassing the police blockade. Greenfield! Jake spits out the name like a curse. They must have pulled strings to get through. Sheriff Martinez steps forward, hand on her weapon. They may have friends in high places, but this is still my jurisdiction. But they're running out of time. The artifact vibrates almost violently in Thomas's hands, and the lights above them pulse with increasing urgency. Now, Marcus says firmly. It has to be now. Trust your instincts, Thomas. You found it for a reason, Taking a deep breath, Thomas steps onto the platform. The moment his boots touch the ancient stone, the symbols carved into its surface begin to glow with the same blue-green light. He can feel a subtle vibration through his feet, rising up through his body. The SUVs screech to a halt nearby, and men in expensive suits emerge, led by none other than Cooper from the bank. But Thomas barely notices them. Something is guiding his hands as he kneels at the platform's center. The artifact rises from his grasp, hovering momentarily before aligning itself with a depression in the stone that Thomas hadn't noticed before. With a sound like a crystal bell ringing, it slots perfectly into place. The effect is immediate and spectacular. The platform's symbols flare with blinding light, and the swirling vortex above them coalesces into a brilliant column. The rain stops falling completely around them, suspended in midair like diamonds. From the depression in the stone, lines of light begin to spread outward, following channels carved so finely they'd been invisible before. They form an intricate pattern that matches both the map and the star coordinates Emily discovered. And then, they hear it. A deep, resonant tone that seems to come from the earth itself. The platform begins to reconfigure itself, sections of stone sliding and rotating with impossibly smooth precision. At its center, the artifact pulses in triumph. "No!" Cooper shouts, rushing forward with his colleagues. "Stop them! Do you have any idea what this is worth?" But they're too late. With a final surge of light, the platform's transformation completes, revealing a sight that leaves them all speechless. Hovering above the central depression is a holographic display unlike anything they've ever seen. A three-dimensional star map showing celestial movements over thousands of years. Dr. Rodriguez is the first to find her voice. This is impossible. The level of technology required." "Not impossible," Marcus says softly. "Just forgotten. Until now." The corporate lawyers stand frozen, their phones recording everything despite themselves. Cooper looks like he might faint. Emily, however, is already analyzing the display with her scientific mind. "These aren't just star patterns. Look, there are symbols, numbers. It's some kind of message." Dr. Rodriguez nods excitedly. "Multiple messages, I think. Scientific knowledge, historical records. This could revolutionize our understanding of ancient civilizations." Thomas feels a profound sense of rightness settle over him. This is what the land has been protecting all these years. Not just artifacts or archaeology, but knowledge, pure, powerful, and precious. Sheriff Martinez steps forward, addressing Cooper and his stunned colleagues. "Gentlemen, this site is now under federal protection. I've just received confirmation from the State Archaeological Office. Any attempt to interfere will result in immediate arrest." The corporate lawyers shuffle backwards, their plans for quick profit evaporating in the face of something far bigger than they'd imagined. Cooper can't even meet Thomas's eyes as they retreat to their vehicles. As the holographic display continues its mesmerizing dance above the platform, Sarah takes Thomas's hand. "What happens now?" she asks. Marcus smiles. Now we begin to learn. Your family has guarded this place for generations without even knowing it. Perhaps that was part of the plan all along. The artifact pulses warmly in agreement, and Thomas realizes that while this victory hasn't solved all their problems, it has given them something precious. Hope and a purpose bigger than themselves. As the group begins to document and study the incredible display, Thomas looks around at his unlikely team of allies, family, friends, experts, and protectors, all brought together by an ancient mystery. Whatever comes next, they'll face it together, guardians of a legacy more profound than any of them could have imagined. The storm clouds finally begin to part, revealing a sky full of stars that seem to twinkle in harmony with the holographic display. The first victory is theirs, but Thomas suspects it's only the beginning of a much greater adventure. Dawn breaks over the Harrison farm to find the property transformed into a carefully controlled research site. After the dramatic events of the night, Dr. Rodriguez worked her connections tirelessly, and by morning, a small team of top researchers has assembled. The media remains held at bay by Sheriff Martinez's deputies, while state officials work to establish more permanent security measures. Inside a hastily erected research tent near the platform, Dr. Catherine Chen, a quantum physicist from MIT, studies readings from her sophisticated equipment with growing amazement. "These energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever recorded," she announces to the assembled group. "The holographic display isn't just a projection, it's somehow manipulating space-time itself on a quantum level." Beside her, Dr. James Whitehawk, a leading expert in archaeoastronomy, compares the star maps with ancient astronomical records. "The precision is incredible," he says, shaking his head in wonder. "These calculations account for stellar drift over millennia, with accuracy that surpasses our current technology. Whoever built this, they weren't just advanced for their time. In some ways, they were beyond what we can do now." Emily hovers nearby, absorbing every detail. She's been allowed to stay involved due to her crucial role in decoding the initial coordinates. "Look at this pattern here," she points out to Dr. Chen. "It seems to pulse in sync with specific star positions." The artifact, still embedded in the platform, hums in apparent approval. Dr. Chen's instruments record a subtle spike in energy output. "Remarkable," she murmurs. "It's responding to her observation. This system isn't just a repository of information, it's interactive." Thomas and Sarah watch from the tent's entrance, still trying to process how much their lives have changed in just a few days. Marcus Standing Bear joins them, carrying several ancient texts from his tribe's private archives. "Our stories speak of the star people who came to the valley long ago," he explains, showing them delicate drawings that bear striking similarities to the platform's symbols. "They were said to have left guardians, not just the lights we've seen, but chosen families who would protect their legacy until it was time for its revelation." Dr. Rodriguez looks up from where she's been documenting the platform's inscriptions. "The Harrisons," she says. "That's why your great-grandfather chose this specific plot of land. Somehow he knew." Before Thomas can respond, a new voice enters the conversation. "And that's exactly what makes this site so uniquely valuable." They turn to find Dr. Diana Walsh, the head of the Smithsonian's Ancient Technologies Division, striding into the tent. Her presence lends immediate gravitas to the situation. "This isn't just about the technology," Dr. Walsh continues, studying the holographic display with intense interest. "It's about the unbroken line of custodianship. The combination of advanced ancient technology with documented modern stewardship is unprecedented." Sarah steps forward. "What exactly does that mean for us, for the farm?" Dr. Walsh smiles reassuringly. "It means, Mrs. Harrison, that your property is about to be designated as one of the most important historical sites in North America. The grants and funding alone will ensure its preservation for generations to come." The implications of this sink in slowly. Their financial troubles, which seemed so overwhelming just days ago, now feel almost trivial in comparison to the significance of what they're protecting. But the day's revelations are far from over. Dr. Chen's equipment suddenly registers a massive surge in energy from the platform. The holographic display shifts, revealing new layers of information that cause the assembled experts to gasp collectively. "These aren't just star maps," Dr. Whitehawk breathes. "They're navigation charts. Look at these trajectories, these planetary alignments. They're showing us paths through space." Dr. Walsh leans in, her professional composure slipping slightly. "Are you suggesting—" "Yes," Dr. Chen interrupts, her eyes shining with excitement. "This is a map of interstellar travel routes. Whoever left this here, they weren't just studying the stars. They were traveling among them." The artifact's hum takes on a different tone, and new symbols begin appearing in the holographic display. Dr. Rodriguez frantically documents everything while Marcus consults his tribal texts, finding more and more correlations between the ancient stories and what they're seeing. "There's something else," Emily says suddenly. She's been quiet for the last few minutes, studying a particular sequence of symbols. "These numbers, they're counting down to something. Dr. Chen quickly confirms Emily's observation with her instruments. She's right. There's a temporal component to these readings. Whatever this system is designed to do, it's building toward something specific. The awakening, Marcus says softly, reading from one of his texts. Our stories speak of a time when the Star People would return, when the signs aligned and the chosen guardians proved worthy. Thomas feels the weight of generations of Harrison farmers on his shoulders. How long? He asks, his voice rough with emotion. Dr. Chen makes some rapid calculations. Based on these readings, approximately 3 months. Whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen on the winter solstice. Dr. Walsh takes charge immediately. We need to establish a permanent research facility here. Mrs. Harrison? Mr. Harrison, with your permission, the Smithsonian would like to partner with you to protect and study this site. You'll retain ownership of the land, but we'll provide everything needed to secure and understand what you've discovered. As if to emphasize the importance of this moment, the artifact pulses brightly, and the holographic display expands to show even more star systems, more travel routes, more ancient knowledge waiting to be understood. I think, Sarah says, squeezing Thomas's hand, our family just got a lot bigger. She looks around at the assembled experts, each bringing their own crucial perspective to unraveling this ancient mystery. Thomas nods, understanding that their role as guardians is evolving rather than ending. The farm will survive, but as something far more significant than they ever imagined. Their financial troubles are solved, but they've inherited a responsibility that goes beyond anything they could have conceived of a few days ago. As the experts return to their analysis, Emily joins her parents. Dad, she says hesitantly, I think I want to change my college plans. Dr. Chen says I have a natural aptitude for quantum mechanics, and with everything that's happening here, Thomas pulls his daughter close, profound gratitude washing over him. Somehow this ancient legacy isn't just saving their farm. It's opening up new possibilities for their family's future, while connecting them more deeply to their past. Outside the tent, the morning sun catches the suspended raindrops that still hover around the platform, creating countless tiny rainbows. The lights that first led them to this discovery dance more softly now, as if satisfied that their message has finally been understood. The validation of the experts has transformed their incredible discovery into something official, something historic. But Thomas knows that the real adventure is just beginning. In 3 months, they'll learn exactly what they're preparing for and why generations of Harrisons were chosen to protect this extraordinary legacy. 3 months pass like a whirlwind of discovery and preparation. The Harrison farm has been transformed into a state-of-the-art research facility, with the historic farmhouse serving as the command center for what many are calling the most significant archaeological find of the century. On the eve of the winter solstice, Thomas stands on his porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and purple. The old barn hasn't been rebuilt. Instead, a sleek research dome now protects the ancient platform, its surface occasionally flickering with the ethereal blue-green lights that have become a familiar sight in the valley. Sarah joins him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Hard to believe how much has changed, she says softly. Remember what we were worried about this time last year? Thomas chuckles. Their financial troubles seem like a lifetime ago. The Smithsonian's partnership has not only secured the farm's future, but has transformed it into something far greater than they could have imagined. Emily has already been offered a full scholarship to MIT, where she'll study quantum physics under Dr. Chen's mentorship. Inside the research dome, activity reaches a fever pitch as the final preparations are made. Dr. Walsh oversees a team of experts from around the world, each drawn to this remarkable site. The artifact's countdown has grown more insistent with each passing day, its hum now a constant presence that seems to vibrate through the very ground. It's time, Marcus announces, emerging from the dome. Over the past months, he has helped translate more of the platform's messages, combining his people's oral traditions with the advanced scientific analysis. The result has been a deeper understanding of what they're about to witness. The Harrisons join the assembled team inside the dome. Emily takes her place at one of the monitoring stations, her expertise with the site's unique energy patterns having proved invaluable. Dr. Chen stands ready with her equipment, while Dr. Whitehawk makes final adjustments to the astronomical alignment calculations. As the sun sets completely, the platform begins to pulse with unprecedented energy. The holographic display expands, filling the dome with a vast map of the cosmos. But this time, something is different. The star patterns are moving, converging, as if something is approaching. Energy readings are off the charts, Dr. Chen announces, her voice tense with excitement. Whatever's coming, it's starting now. The artifact suddenly rises from its housing in the platform, hovering at eye level. Its surface patterns shift rapidly, and the air around it begins to shimmer with that familiar blue-green light. The suspended raindrops that have become a permanent feature around the site start to move in complex patterns, forming three-dimensional symbols in the air. It's a key, Marcus says suddenly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Not just for the platform, for something much bigger. As if in response, the ground begins to vibrate softly. The platform's symbols align with the stellar patterns above, creating a perfect harmony of earth and sky. Then, with a sound like distant crystal bells, a beam of light erupts from the artifact, splitting into multiple rays that form a geometric pattern in the air. Look, Emily points to the holographic display. A new set of coordinates appears, showing something massive approaching Earth's solar system. But rather than causing panic, the sight fills everyone with a sense of profound anticipation. The artifact's hum reaches a crescendo, and suddenly the air itself seems to fold. A doorway of light appears within the geometric pattern, and through it steps a figure that simultaneously seems alien and oddly familiar. "The Guardians have done well," the figure says in a voice that somehow everyone understands. "The Harrison line has protected our legacy until the appointed time, just as we foresaw." Thomas steps forward, drawn by an instinct he doesn't quite understand. "You're the Star People," he says. "The ones who left this here for us to find." The figure nods, its form shifting slightly in the light. "We left more than knowledge," it explains. "We left a choice. Humanity stands at a crossroads, and the time has come to choose your path among the stars." Over the next hours, as the winter solstice reaches its peak, the true purpose of the site becomes clear. It isn't just a repository of ancient knowledge or a beacon for returning visitors. It's an invitation, an offer to join a vast community of civilizations spread across the galaxy. The artifact, they learn, is actually a key to a network of travel points throughout space, left behind by advanced civilizations to help emerging worlds take their first steps into a larger universe. The Harrison farm wasn't chosen randomly. It sits at a crucial junction point in this cosmic network. "Your family protected this place without knowing its true purpose," the visitor tells Thomas. "That devotion, that unwavering stewardship despite not understanding why, is exactly why your world is ready for what comes next." As dawn approaches, decisions are made that will change not just the Harrison farm, but all of humanity. The site will become Earth's first gateway to the stars, a stepping stone to humanity's future among other civilizations. And the Harrisons, along with their extended family of researchers, experts, and friends, will help guide that journey. The visitor prepares to depart, but not before leaving them with one final revelation. "Your great-grandfather didn't choose this land by chance," it tells Thomas. "He was chosen, just as his descendants were chosen. The ability to recognize and protect something important, even without understanding it fully, that's a rare gift in any species." As the first rays of sunlight pierce the dome, Thomas looks at his family, Sarah, Emily, and now this entire team that has become part of their extended family. He thinks about all the generations of Harrisons who worked this land, unknowingly protecting something so profound. The artifact settles back into its housing, but now they understand it's not just a key to ancient mysteries, it's a key to humanity's future. The platform's lights pulse softly, a steady heartbeat promising new adventures and discoveries to come. Well, Sarah says, taking Thomas's hand, I guess we're not just farmers anymore. Thomas smiles, watching as Emily excitedly discusses quantum theories with Dr. Chen, while Dr. Walsh and Marcus plan the site's expansion. No, he agrees, but we're still caretakers. That's what Harrisons have always been. Caretakers of the future. Outside the dome, the new day dawns on a world forever changed. The Harrison farm, once a simple agricultural operation, now stands as humanity's first gateway to the stars. And at its heart, a family of farmers turned cosmic guardians prepares to help guide their species into a bold new chapter of existence. The artifact hums softly, a sound that now feels like home, as the lights in the valley dance their eternal pattern, no longer a mystery but a welcome beacon guiding humanity toward its destiny among the stars.